On a new episode of Locked On Cavs, let's talk about Evan Mobley's handle. Let's talk about two key bench pieces, Ricky Rubio and Caris LeVert. That is all coming up today on Locked On Cavs for Tuesday, February 28th.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
All right, big show today. I'm Chris Manning, Fear the Sword, Dime, Cleveland Magazine, other places. That man over there is Evan Dammarell, the proprietor of one right down Euclid. Let's dive into segment one of today's show, Evan, and that's Evan Mobley. So I want to hit you with just a little bit of a take that I had when you're looking my direction. We're ready to go here. You ready?
I'm listening. Don't worry. I was just looking.
All right. I want some eye contact. I want engagement. Like, I'm ready to go, you know? Life's a little weird, but we're making the most of it. We're fired up, making good podcasts here. Locally sourced, sponsor us, local bars, local t-shirt companies. I want some cheddar to make it better. But, okay, Evan Mobley, is having the sleep. Evan Mobley is in this situation where he is improving in real time. And I think there are two big things on the offensive end that are interesting to consider as far as his improvement goes. There is his handle and his three-point shot. I am of the camp, and maybe I'm just obsessing over this because it is lower hanging fruit to me than the three-point shot. But I think a massive step for him would be a tighter, improved handle. His turnover percentage this year is a little bit higher this year versus last. And I think a lot of those turnovers are not passing mistakes or like errant reads or any of that stuff. It is like his handle is loose and he gets stripped and he just loses control of the ball in the post, in space. These are little things that if he cuts them out, he's going to get more opportunities in the post and at the rim. He's going to get more opportunities to score on the break. He's going to have more opportunities to feed his teammates and get them open shots and good looks via pressure he creates at the rim. I think this can unlock some really interesting passing situations as you go forward, and as he grows into it, you see where it goes, what that can unlock for the offense, add another layer to the offense. Would the three-pointer help the team function better right now and with a too big front court? 100%. There's no denying that. It would be a big deal if he could become like a respectable three-point shooter that teams worry about. But I really think, not even kind of, I think the handle is a bigger deal. What say you?
I don't think you're wrong. And to your point, his turnovers are up this year because I think the Cavs are giving him more responsibilities on the offensive side of the ball. I know heading into the regular season, Evan Mobley certainly talked about his three-point shot. And I think kind of what was underlying through all that is the fact that he expected to kind of initiate the offense more. And you see times every now and then, just even now or all throughout the season, where he'll grab the defensive rebound and he'll open up on the break and maybe he'll pass ahead to somebody who's streaking, whether it's Garland or Mitchell or maybe even Okoro. But there are situations in sets where sometimes the Cavs will say, hey, Evan, we need you to create from the top of the perimeter and initiate against a set defense. And sometimes he does struggle against that, like you said, because the handle is a little loose. He can be a little sloppy at times, but this is just the balancing act the Cavs kind of have to go through, where they are overnight contenders because of Evan Mobley and now Donovan Mitchell, but they want to continue to grow and make this roster better because player development isn't static. It's very dynamic. There isn't like a set linear path for this, like where we say, okay, Evan Mobley's just going to go into the lab or the biogenic chamber in Dragon Ball Z and just come out like a super refined passer, a super refined shooter. Like, you're seeing him do a little bit of both. The other night against the Toronto Raptors, I believe he took a career high 6 3-pointers and he didn't make much of them, but that's encouraging, I think, in the grand scheme of things, because you want him doing that kind of stuff. And again, it's hard to really pencil in what Mobley can be for this team long term. Like, you and I are in agreement that he could be the best player for this Cavs team come if they start knocking on the door of a possible championship, but cross that bridge when we come to it. But when it comes to what can make him more impactful maybe now and in the future, I agree. It's the passing aspect, just because his handle is so loose at times that you can't expect him to be like a primary shot creator. He's very reliant on Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell at times to get him cleaner looks at the basket, or maybe even flare out to the perimeter when he does start taking those 3-pointers and making them more often. But you saw it the other night. I mean, I don't know if it was an offensive foul or a turnover or something in between that, but you saw Evan Mobley at the top of the key, and then Donovan Mitchell like kicked him the ball and then started streaking toward the basket along the baseline. And Mobley kind of read Donovan Mitchell perfectly and got him an easy basket at the rim. Like, those are certain ways the Cavs can just add depth to this offense. It's otherwise somewhat vanilla at times. I know using the pick and roll is just a multifaceted tool. It's just a smart way to go about using a functional NBA offense. But there are certain wrinkles and certain things the Cavs could do. And yeah, I think it is the passing aspect, just because the shot has potential. I don't think it's fully there. And also, Evan Mobley's also just not going to get a ton of 3-point shot opportunities like that night against the Raptors the other night, notwithstanding. But when you have Darius Garland going, Donovan Mitchell going, you have Caris LeVert soaking up shots off the bench. You also have Jared Allen, who needs fed as well. And Isaac Okoro is going to get his attempts too. There's only so many attempts for an opportunities for Evan Mobley to come along and kind of get looks at the bucket. And he's such a hyper efficient player that's obsessed with winning so much that I think 9 times out of 10 would rather just get his teammate the cleaner look versus him. So sure, you'd see like 14, 18 points a night, but he can do a whole lot more. And he does a lot to begin with, but he can do a whole lot more with his passing game for sure.
Well, but I think he can get the threes if they want to. Like, if they want to stick him in the corner, which they did the other night, and stick him above the break, they can do that. I think he can just be more than that. And that is where I come to this. Like, when I think his path forward is not Miami Chris Bosh, it is more Giannis like in going downhill. It is bruising, like freight train, getting to the line, being a creator that way. Like, I think you're limiting what Evan Mobley can be and how good he can be if you're just like, hey, be a spacer for us. He's obviously going to have to give up possessions and give up opportunities to grow to Mitchell and Garland. That is how this works. That is where this team has gone. His usage rate is not what a traditional second-year superstar would be, because this team is good and he is sacrificing opportunities in that result. But I think like for him and the Cavs to be their best self, like I think him getting that handle and being just this different offensive hub can be a big thing. And I think particularly if you get into lineups in the future, I think like next year it could be like a baseline of this, and we've seen samples of it this year. Mobley is the only big on the floor. One of those two guards, Garland or Mitchell, pick whichever one you want. Garland and him have developed, I think, like another level of chemistry this year that as lob threat and things. And then just a bunch of shooting. Mobley is the downhill, you can do different stuff with Garland. He creates shots for other guys. It just unlocks so much more. The simplest thing to wrap your mind around, I think, is Evan Mobley takes a bunch of threes and it solves things. We've talked about that a lot on the show. But I think the more dynamic, like sustainable, like a real big thing would be the handle just being tighter. I think like even just this year, if the handle is tighter and he cuts a turnover or two a game off his ledger, you're getting an even better player than you've gotten the last month. Every bad moment I feel like he's had on offense the last month is when he wants to be aggressive or is trying to be, and the handle fails him and he has a dumb turnover. That is where so many of the mistakes feel like they're happening right now.
No, you and I are 100% in agreement. If you just want to take currently what the Cavs have in front of them, not even just looking ahead to next year, you could roll out a lineup of, let's say, Darius Garland, Ricky Rubio, Jetty Osman, Dean Wade, and Evan Mobley at the 5, with, Garland kind of acting as that functional shooter for a guard, but like Rubio is just like that safety valve offensively as a playmaker. Like, you could do a lot of fun stuff, whether it's through the spread pick and roll, just traditional pick and roll stuff. Like, Mobley could act as an offensive hub with guys like cutting off screens, or the Cavs running like elevator door plays and just like double drag sets and things like that, just kind of get easier, cleaner looks on the perimeter. And you just let Mobley just kind of cook at the top of the key, or just within the flow of the offense, and he can get easy guys just floating out onto the edge and get an easy assist that way, because that lines up with what the Cavs are kind of looking for. Because I think at the end of the day, you want the defense to be collapsing on Mobley, especially because you just can't leave him open or on a one-on-one situation sometimes, depending on who is defending him. And if defenses collapse on him, that means there's going to be a guy who's open. And Mobley is such a smart and savvy and cerebral passer and playmaker that 9 times out of 10, he's going to find that guy and get the easy assist. And yeah, that's a way to unlock things. And yeah, you could stretch this out further. You can expand upon it a little bit too by maybe adding some youth and athleticism and some shooting, whether it's the free agency or the bevy of second round picks you have coming up too. Like, there's ways you could go about this. Maybe Sam Merrill gets a call up after his time with the Charge this year. Like, there's options that, like, if they continue to grow and the Cavs plant this and water it and nurture it properly, it could blossom into something really great. And I do think just making Mobley like a little bit of that offensive hub and like allowing some of that creativity, like maybe let him be a pick and roll ball handler at times with Jared Allen, as Jared Allen serving as a screener, because that's what Allen's very good at. And you just keep building on that, maybe that big to big passing that you've been working on too. Like there's a lot of ways and a lot of avenues the Cavs could go about this, but yeah, like spread pick and roll sets, the Cavs saw a lot of success of that with like even Mitchell acting as the point guard early in the season. And I'm kind of surprised they've shied away from it at times now that like the team's starting to get fully healthy, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe this is something we'll see more of come playoff time, just because the Cavs have found like, okay, we're like hyper efficient offensively and we're able to hold it together enough defensively just because we have this otherworldly person in Evan Mobley locking things down.
Yep. All right, let's come back. We're going to talk about Ricky Rubio, what he's been, where he could go from here. But first, got to tell you about our friends at Built Bar. Look, if you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and the calories, then you got to try Built Bar. Look, everyone's just gotten through the holidays, and the goal is to eat healthier. If you're like me and you want to eat healthier, but you don't want to compromise on taste, then you should try a Built Bar. Built Bars are actually healthy, and they are actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious, you won't even think they're good for you. That is perfect for those New Year's resolutions. Look, what makes Built so great? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. They just brought back the cookie dough puffs. I know that's a favorite of Evan's, and they have animal cracker right now, which is also a really cool flavor. And look, most of these bars only have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein, and I don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That is right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, go to the pharmacy, get a 4-pack of one of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. And if you're close to your Sam's Club, get a 13-bar box there with hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. Thank Evan and I later. All right, back here, Locked On Cavs. Evan, Ricky Rubio was a big, I think, return for them, a big emotional return. I think there's so much joy in what he provides.
Mm-hmm.
But he has not been at last year's level yet. And I think that is where we have to start with this.
That's not a surprise. We're recording this at the end of February. March is right around the corner. I think realistically speaking, you're not going to see Rubio be physically 100% maybe until late March, early April. And even then, like, this is a guy who's torn the same ACL twice. He's in his early 30s, for people who like to get on me saying his mid 30s, but early 30s, and is not really being asked to do a lot of what he did last year. Like, I think, again, Chris and I were called naysayers for this, but you started to notice, at least statistically, that the quote unquote Spanish national team, Ricky Rubio, was a bit of a fallacy. And you saw like this dramatic jump. Like, you can't deny that he had a dramatic bump and jump to start the season, but then you started to see him come back down to earth a little bit and statistically kind of average back out to what he was at the Timberwolves the year prior before joining the Cavs. And that's not a bad thing, but yeah, I agree. Like, physically, I just don't think he's 100% there yet still. And I think that's fine. You have to be realistic that injuries just aren't fixed instantaneously. I'm not talking to you. I'm just talking to anybody listening right now. And that it's going to be a gradual ramp up in process. Like, I think I saw the other day that Paulo Neto currently is better than Ricky Rubio. I just don't think that's true for how the Cavs utilize Rubio as like a bigger body guard to pair next to Mitchell or Garland, or even in 3-guard sets with Mitchell and Garland together. Like, there's a lot of ways you can do this. It's just the Cavs err on the side of caution. JB Bickerstaff said exactly that the other day when it comes to injuries and injury recovery. And it's going to be a slow, gradual process. The Cavs clearly believe Rubio will be not just their backup guard this year, but next year and the year after that as well, with how they structured his contract.
Or at least in the last year is a non-guarantee, but I would say next year at least.
For sure. And there's no need to ramp up the production or try and maybe rush him back to the floor, because you want him to be 100% come playoff time, because there's going to be times he needs to do a little bit of everything for the Cavs in terms of playmaking and maybe some offensive stuff in general, just because maybe the moment is too big for Darius Garland sometimes. And like, you need Rubio to be kind of that balm to calm things over. Or you just kind of needed some type of playmaking going, because let's say you draw Miami in the first round and like the Heat kind of find ways to make the Cavs very uncomfortable, and you let Rubio be like that off-ball playmaking threat. Like, there's a lot of ways you can go about this, but Yeah, he's not where he was. I'm not surprised he's not where he was. I think folks who were acting like Ricky Rubio coming back was going to be like the instant fix to all their issues are a little short-sighted. I think there's a huge emotional bump, and there continues to be a huge emotional bump from having Ricky back on the floor versus just on the sidelines and in the locker room. And like, yeah, that definitely has a tangible effect. But if you're expecting more of like a physical, statistical impact, you got to be a little bit more patient throughout this process.
He's capped at about 20 minutes right now. He's not playing back-to-backs. There's only one back-to-back the rest of the season for whatever that's worth. He's at 28% on threes. He's at 20% on non-corner threes, which is just dreadful. Never been like obviously a plus shooter, but like last year he was very hot from three, and that has not carried over. The on-off splits, I think, for the second straight year tell a really compelling story about how his value is so much more defensive than offensive. I think you hear guys talk about the Ricky Rubio effect and the bump you get from him in the playmaking, but I think the defensive stuff is ultimately the kind of where you feel his impact more, particularly if he's not going to make the threes that come his way. What I tend to think, though, Evan, is that as much as like they are going to be cautious and say that publicly and all that stuff, I don't think there's a way for us to get around thinking about what this team is this year and not think that the best version of the Cavs needs more from Rubio than what they've got from him since he's come back. He is one of the top 8 on a team that is hoping to contend for something this year. I don't know if that's a title. I don't know where they'll ultimately get, but like they need him as one of these top 8 guys. And he just hasn't been like exactly what you would want. I don't think you've gotten like the best version of him. And I think that obviously does make sense coming off of that second ACL tear in the same leg and at his age and all that stuff. But I think they need like a really good version of Rubio just to make this kind of top 8 unit feel a little bit better. And you don't like have an alternative for him. Like you're not going to go to Neto and kind of and get some of that. Maybe like in a pinch you get to move the ball, but like in the playoffs, like I don't think they're going to want to play Howell Neto. They're not going to want to like turn Rubio's minutes into like Cedi Osman minutes. I think they like the idea of Rubio and like the idea of LeVert for similar reasons, and that they like want to have someone else on the floor who isn't Garland or Mitchell who can dribble the ball and like allow you to not have to them just bring the ball up every time and the grind that can take on you over really a condensed schedule. I think when I look at the rest of the season, there is no bench player I am looking at more just to see what kind of form they end up in when we get to April than Rubio. And it's more than LeVert, more than Dean Wade, more than any of those other guys. It is on Rubio right now, and that's not totally fair. But I think the need for him to be really good is just so there that we got to pay attention and see how he actually looks.
I think that's a fair way to look at it. I'm more curious to see how Dean Wade functions because I still don't know if he's 100% healthy. Maybe he's still getting his legs underneath him just because, sure, against the Raptors, he played a lot. But before that, he had played less than 10 minutes in, I believe, 5 straight games for Cleveland. And the whole point of bumping Kevin Love out of the rotation was to get Dean Wade more minutes. But also, I'm podcasting for a reason and not in an NBA coaching staff's office for a reason.
Yeah,
folks.
But here's the thing: we do a good podcast, and our takes matter. F that we don't work for a team. Let's just give our takes and our reporting. And
I know. I'm just
whatever.
I'm
here to gas you up. I'm gonna be the gas up guy. That's gonna be my new thing. I'm gonna get you juiced. I'm gonna get you excited. I'm gonna get producer Jake excited, and we're gonna live our best life. Let's go.
Well, I appreciate that.
I don't know how you feel about this version of me, but here we go.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the energy and the positivity in this sesh. So my crystal is certainly glowing. Jake knows, but with Rubio, I'm willing to be more patient just because maybe it's my college studies, just studying orthopedic stuff, working in the orthopedic field for so long, having a good understanding of how needs work and how like it's not a surefire recovery, even with the advent of modern medicine on his side. It's a wait and see trial process. And yeah, to your point, there needs to be a gradual ramp up of his production and maybe just a little bit more from him, because right now I don't want to say looks like a shell of himself, but he clearly isn't 100% when he's on the floor still. Like he's still trying to learn the cuts and the movements and get fully comfortable, because there's only so much you can get from 1-on-1 or 1-on-5 or 5-on-5 situations in practice drills with the coaches or your fellow teammates and things like that. It's a completely different beast when you're on the court. But yeah, I think the Cavs are going to need Rubio just to kind of maybe tap in a little bit to that fountain of youth that he found last season, if he's still able to, if it's not dry at least, and then see what he has from there. But I don't know. I know. I agree with you with like, yeah, you didn't bring in Hollow Neto to play in crunch time situations in the playoffs. You brought him in to act as the bridge between signing Ricky Rubio and waiting for Rubio to return to the floor, which Rubio eventually did. And that's why you don't see Neto really touching the floor, if at all, unless it's like in the second of a back-to-back or a first of a back-to-back. So we'll see how it goes. I know the Cavs have a plan set in place. JB Bickerstaff has made it pretty clear that like he's not going to obviously play his hand because it's not a safe thing to do medically, just because bodies respond differently every day. But I think he's trending in the right direction. I think you're seeing a little bit of the bump and a little bit of the juice. Sometimes you're like, okay, there's the Rubio I kind of remember from last year, or maybe the Rubio that has some touches of the time in Cleveland, but more so statistically is putting out like a profile similar to what he did in Minnesota. But there is a tangible effect to what he does, and I think he just needs to get more comfortable physically, because it's obviously going to benefit the rest of the roster. But the guys you mentioned, like whether it's Cedi Osman or Dean Wade or I guess Caris LeVert, because he survived the trade deadline, like those three can kind of really depend on Ricky Rubio being like a better playmaker, a better defender, just a lot of little things Rubio brought to the table that made the Cavs so efficient with their bench unit last year. Rubio can provide. It's just, is he there physically? Because I'm sure mentally he is. It's just the body needs to catch up now.
All right, let's go to one more break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Caris LeVert. But first, got to tell you about our friends at LinkedIn. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open position with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post company and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, last segment. Let's talk about Caris LeVert. Evan, what a weird year Caris LeVert is having. To his credit, he is playing into his role and doing what the Cavs need him to do more often than not. That I think is in a fact. For the year, He's at 36.9% of catch and shoot threes. That is a really good number for Caris LeVert. He's at 22.2% in February at 2 attempts per game. The shot has not felt like any catch and shoot three he's taken in the last month he's going to go in. I expect this when I went and pulled the number for this, I was like, oh, this will be about 30%. It was lower than that. Maybe that rebound in some way, maybe he was just really hot to ride the year. That is something kind of worth watching of where his shot kind of ends up in that way. But he's going to get minutes. They're going to ask him to do different things. They're going to need him to kind of nail, I think, the minutes he gets. We're going to talk more about this bench on the Wednesday show because I think there's strengths and weaknesses we can get into. But LeVert is having just kind of a weird year. And I wonder if you got him in Varnish, kind of what he would say about what his role is kind of ultimately ended up being.
I think it's a fair question to ask him just because it's changed quite a bit. To start the season, he was the starting three. He was supposed to be more of that connective tissue where he provides you offense and defense. He wasn't really giving you much of either at times because he was the fifth banana and the Cavs were they were underutilizing him while they had Cedi Osman, Dean Wade, Isaac Okoro, and Kevin Love at the time coming off the bench. So way less shot opportunities for LeVert, and I think credit where credit's due for him. He approached JB Bickerstaff and said, hey, this isn't working. I would like to kind of come off the bench just so I can get more shot opportunities, and you're seeing a lot of that for sure. He is the second, third, or fourth leading shot taker on the night, and that's why I mentioned Evan Mobley's offensive creation kind of doesn't get stunted, but it has to change the trajectory a little bit just because he shares a lineup and a floor with Caris LeVert and his teammates sometimes, but LeVert's role has changed a lot. He's not the defensive stopper he was in Brooklyn. People who think that, that's just a fallacy. He just isn't a plus defender. He isn't a good catch and shoot 3-point shooter. But you're seeing a little bit as of late. I think something that's a little functional with Caris LeVert is just him acting as a primary or secondary creator for the Cavs on offense, where It was against the Denver Nuggets the other night where he saw LeVert crashing towards the basket, and then he saw Denver's defense collapse on him, and he kicked the ball to a trailing Jared Allen, and Jared Allen got 2 easy dunks off that. Or you saw the game against the Raptors where Caris LeVert was just moving the rock, period, and doing a very good job of it. He was making very smart passes and of ways where, like, okay, the defense is collapsing on me in the interior, I'm going to kick it out to the guy on the perimeter, and the guy either makes it or that guy just resets the offense and runs something differently. So there's ways that the Cavs are utilizing him that are smart. I don't know if they're fully like reaching the vision. Again, like I just from an optics standpoint kind of question the overall fit of what LeVert brings you to the table, but he has the added backing of the support of the front office. Like I think it's pretty clear that there's going to be a conversation between him and the Cavaliers front office about staying with Cleveland long term, and maybe they kick that can down the line of letting him be a trade asset. But at least for now, like that's
what that might be. That might be like, hey, like you do something positive for us now, but like let's give you $15 million so we can like trade you in like 6 months if we need to. That's where I feel like this might end up.
So you're kicking that can down the line, but like right now he's still getting comfortable, I'd say, in his role, just because the Cavs are trying to bring Ricky Rubio back into the fold too with the bench unit. But
okay,
at the end of the day,
let me is it bad that we're 20 games left in the year and he's not comfortable? Is that bad? Because that sounds bad when you say that as like just a sentence as a fact.
I don't think it's bad just because the Cavs have so many more pieces on their roster that mitigate the need for Caris LeVert to be like that 15 to 20 point scorer a night. Like if there's nights he scores single digits, but he gives you a couple assists or something like that, like you chalk that up as a win. And you just try to figure out the flow of things. Like I said, there's ways the Cavs have found ways to make LeVert useful, and that's like pairing him with Donovan Mitchell and spread pick and roll stuff. And like I asked Darius Garland about this way earlier in the season. He's like, yeah, Caris is lethal when you use him in pick and roll ball handling scenarios and things like that. So I'm still confused why the Cavs have kind of shied away from that, but like they have footage.
They have Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. That's why. I mean, that's why. Like that is the answer.
I understand that, but like in general, the spread pick and roll has been very functional for the Cavs across the board. Like whether it's Garland, Mitchell, LeVert, Wade, Osman, Love at the time too, like before Love busted his thumb. So like there's a lot of ways to look at this, but I don't know. I think Caris LeVert is a flawed player. I think that's just always was the expectation of him coming from Indiana to Cleveland. I think we're seeing those flaws front and center because I watch him on a night-to-night basis now. But I think he could have the propensity to like just get hot one night and maybe win you a game in a playoff series or something like that, just because he's completely unconscious from the perimeter. Like we've seen it this year when they played the Celtics many moons ago. And there's also going to be nights where he kind of just lays an egg and he's a defensive liability, but he provides you a little bit of other things. And it's going to be a little bit more of a grittier matchup just because Caris LeVert can't bring you that thunder because he's just hot or cold sometimes. He's streaky. Like that's how I feel about him.
Weirdest thing for the year for me with him, the offense with him on the floor, a little below average. The defense is really good. I don't think that has anything to do with him though, which is like the thing. Plus 3.3 per possession with him on the floor. So like he's been like in good lineups and been in effective moments. A lot of Kevin Love in some of those lineups, and obviously those are kind of off the table. We're gonna put a pin in him as like maybe like sneaking you a playoff series because I have that as a bullet point to talk about one of the weaknesses of the bench, because like if they need that kind of bench, he's kind of the obvious guy to provide it to you. So we're gonna talk about that on the Wednesday show. Evan, we'll end on this. Just last thing with LeVert before we wrap up. The fact that his like biggest games this year have come when one of Mitchell or Garland is out, does that to me that says something about like what his ultimate fit is? Is that fair?
I think so. It's harder to justify having Caris LeVert here because he succeeds best when the ball in his hands, and when Garland or Mitchell are there, that's soaking up a ton of responsibilities, and it's even tougher now that Ricky Rubio is back too. And then you're like, okay, Caris, we need you to play predominantly off ball and without the ball in your hands. That kind of mitigates his impact and use, I'd say.
Yeah. All right, let's end there. We're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to talk about Dean Wade, the other member of the 8-man rotation, the other bench guy we didn't get to talk about here. We're going to talk about strengths and weaknesses of the bench, and we're going to get you ready for Cavs Celtics, a nationally televised game for Cleveland in Boston Wednesday night. That should be fun. Cavs 2-0 for the year against Boston. So come back for that one. I'm Chris. That's been Evan. Thanks again to Jake Stevens for producing. Thanks again to Astro Radio for the tunes. And thanks again to Built Bar and LinkedIn for sponsoring today's show. We're out.